Hello, Rick from Grove Camera and Pawn here. I'm about to attempt my first camera review on this, the Pentax, I figure I know by now. On this, the Pentax K3 Mark III Monochrome, although I'm just going to call it the Monochrome. I guess I should have a title. Lazy Camera Reviews. I'll fix it in editing. Lazy Camera Reviews. Before we get to the review, maybe I should go over my life photographically. I started taking pictures back in 86 or so. I started photography with a hand-me-down camera, this Canon AE1. I love taking pictures, but my mom gave me an allowance of 1 roll of film per month. That included processing though. Later, when I got to high school, I realized that the taxpayer could pay for my photography. I started using bulk Tri-X 400, paid for by the school. Thank you, Ross Shepherd High School. And so for the next 30 years or so, I've been shooting black and white, mostly because I can print it myself and it's cheaper. I've tried digital cameras in the past. Being that I work at a camera shop, I come across all sorts of different digital cameras, but there's this blockage between what I'm seeing and what I'm getting, and that blockage is a color filter. I'll try to explain the best I can. Basically, all photo sensors are black and white. They just measure everything in tones, and what happens is you put a color filter over top of it, which changes the tones, and then the camera has to interpret what colors it's trying to capture, right? And then me, as the photographer trying to take black and white pictures, I then have to switch it to black and white, which is the computer again interpolating it to black and white. This translation and then translation again before you get your black and white image. This process requires some kind of computer literacy, which I do not have. I also don't have the patience for it, and I'm lazy. So I always found this very frustrating when I would take my photographs and I imagine them in black and white, only to then have to load the images into the computer to actually make them black and white. They don't come out of the camera black and white. Now, I've been using the Leica stuff for a while. Again, mostly film cameras, but once in a while a digital camera comes in the shop and I just love it and I play with it. But I'm always running into that issue where I have to use photo software. The Leica cameras, they use D&G RAW files, and not all cheap photo software will run that. I don't want to pay you a monthly charge because I'm cheap and I'm lazy. So like many photographers who came from black and white and went to digital cameras, I was intrigued when Leica came out with a black and white body, but holy crap are they expensive. You thought this is about a $3,000 camera. Let's not talk about the glass, but the cameras themselves are about $3,000. If you want a black and white, even used, you're looking at about $5,000, $6,000. They go for a premium. Which brings me to the Pentax. The Pentax Monochrome, brand new, is $2,500 for the body, and lenses are cheap and plentiful. You can get Pentax glass everywhere, and if you really like that retro look, their screw mount lenses are fantastic. Now, people were surprised when Pentax came out with a black and white sensor on their camera. I wasn't really, because Pentax is always kind of on the cutting edge of weird. Take, for example, the PZ1, which this camera reminds me of a lot. I mean, the layout's not really the same. They put a screen on here and the flash on here, so you know the flash is over your hand. It was a fantastic idea. No one else tried it, Pentax does, and that's what's happening with this camera here. This camera reminds me an awful lot of this camera from the early 90s, not all in good ways. The cool thing about Pentax, as I mentioned, their lenses all fit. So this old PZ1 from 1990 whatever, this power zoom lens will work on this body. With that feature though comes a gripe. And that's the weird corkscrew worm drive focus that they have on these things. It still has it on this body, which is cool because it allows you to use the old lenses. But a lot of the lenses that I like are these small light pancake lenses, and they use that same drive. And it harkens back to the 90s. I remember selling these Pentax PZ1s in Osprey camera way back in the day in Edmonton, and it's got the same sound, that sound to it. But again, even the brand new lenses will work on this old PZ1 body. Now the autofocus, although a little loud, is crispy and quick. It has a face detection feature, but it's no Sony, it's no Nikon. It's a little disappointing, if I'm honest. I went to the flea market to take some pictures. I put it on face detection mode and just started clicking away, all about just to see what would happen. And I was catching maybe half of my shots. Like it's really hit and miss for that. Now, luckily, because the resolution is so high in this and the ISO range is so usable, you can just crank up your ISO and increase your depth of field. That way everything's in focus. Now, whenever I get a brand new camera, I totally reset it. Usually it's a pretty easy process. Pentax, you have to take your memory card, format it, stick it into your computer, download the software, take it out of the computer, put it back in the camera, and run a setup feature, which I tried 3 times. It did not work for 3 times. So I just use this camera as is. Maybe the focusing is better with the current updates. I just used it right out of the box as it was. Now the Monochrome is an in-your-face camera, both figuratively and both figuratively and physically. Now where this camera really shines is landscapes. The amount of shadow detail you can get out of this is insane. Like, I've never seen so much shadow detail in a camera before. And it's only a crop sensor, right? It's not a full sensor, but it's blowing away 4x5 shots. Now, will I ever need that? That's the big question. I don't print large prints. Maybe 11x14 is the largest I go. So as nice as that is, it might be overkill for me, honest. But if you're a landscape photographer who wants a small setup that'll take amazing photos, get this camera. Like, trust me, it'll blow your mind. Coming from an old film background, another thing I love about this is you need filters to get the high contrast out of it. Now, it does have a couple of contrast modes inside the camera that's kind of baked in. If you want the full effect, you have to put filters on, and I love that. Again, it's one less step you have to do in post and processing. Speaking of final product, the camera is capable of giving you that. It has raw processing right in the body. Like I said, you've got 3 modes of contrast that you can select to change your raw image into a JPEG. What else do you need? Especially coming from a film background. Like, you change your contrast, your sharpness. Yeah, I knew it came with free photo software, but I couldn't find it online. It was going nuts. And then, of course, when I read the manual, which I never do, I realized that the software is baked right into the camera itself. So any computer you go to, you've got your software with you. Now, it's the simplest of photo software, but I like simple. I actually have a rule with my photography is that if I can't do it in the darkroom, I don't do it on Lightroom. Now, I've skipped over a few really good things about the camera, so I don't want you to think it's all bad. The camera is tough as nails. When you're out shooting in the cold, you feel it. This feels like a brick of metal. Don't stick your tongue to it because you're not getting it off. And I absolutely love Pentax's TAV mode. This allows you a perfect exposure triangle. So you got your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. Any one you adjust, the other ones adjust accordingly. I think that's fantastic. So if your scene is changing, say you got more light and you're like, oh, I can increase my ISO. You turn the you have a dial here for ISO. If you want to increase your shutter speed, it's this dial. You want to change your aperture, it's this dial. All 3 are right here, ready to go. The live view function is awesome in that you've got a little dial here, switch to live view or switch to video. I wish other camera manufacturers would do that. The problem that a lot of digital cameras have is blowing out highlights. This Leica is terrible for it. So is the Pentax. Although you can recover your shadows, highlights are a bit more of a challenge. To fix that problem, they actually have a specific metering function for highlights. Okay, so let's wrap this up then. I've been shooting for 2 days. That's why my camera angle looks different now. So what I think of the Pentax K3 Mark III Monochrome, I say buy it. It's a great camera, especially if you're a black and white aficionado. It is a bit of a middle child. I think this sensor would have done a lot better in, say, the Ricoh GR3. If they would have packaged it with that camera, sold it for $1,800 or something, I think they'd sell tons of them. Or go full frame and put it in your flagship K1. The K1's got a flippy, tilty screen. It's very popular with landscape photographers already. I think that would have been a better fit for the sensor. So either one of those 2 cameras. The K3 chassis, it's just not enough of any given thing. It's too big to be a street shooting camera. It doesn't have the flippy screen for landscapes. I love the concept. I just think it's in the wrong camera body. Okay, I said it. Now, some of that opinion is personal. I don't like crop sensor cameras. The reason being is that you can never get the lens the right length. I'm used to having a 28, a 35, a 50, and so on and so forth. When you get into crop sensor cameras, you get like weird numbers and you got to multiply by 1.5. And you end up with lenses like this where it's a 70 millimeter lens, which is actually 105 millimeters on this camera. I got another lens that's equivalent to a 32 millimeter, not a 35 millimeter. So those little things really niggle at me. The other thing that you may like is how packed with features it is. It's got tons of features, lots of customizable buttons, and I'm sure lots of the techno types would really enjoy this camera and the fact that you could do so much with it and there's so much built into it. I am a simple person. I like a camera that has shutter speed, aperture, and film speed. That's why I keep leaning back into these cameras. So that's my first review. Comments are open. Feel free to tell me what I've done wrong, or if there's another camera you'd like me to review in my style of reviewing. We'll see you next time.